On the 586th day of the war in Ukraine, the fighting was concentrated in these areas. In the Zaporizhzhia front, heavy battles were reported in the Robotyne sector. The Ukrainian 82nd Air Assault Brigade published this video showing their drone units conducting operations in the areas west of Verbove. In this footage, Ukrainian FPV drones targeted Russian positions along the Russian defensive line. I geolocated a part of this video, and it seems that in this area the fighting remains concentrated along the Novoprokopivka-Verbove road in the location shown on the map. As seen in these images, the road remains heavily contested because the Ukrainian forces maintain full fire control over the entire area. According to Russian sources, during the last 48 hours, Ukrainian forces have increased their presence in the areas north of Verbove, more precisely near Novopokrovka and east of Novofedorivka, where, according to them, after a long time, clashes between Ukrainian and Russian forces have restarted with high intensity. It appears that now both sides are starting to pay more attention to the flanks. Russians continue their efforts to recapture the trenches north of Novoprokopivka, and it is likely that the Russian forces had a partial success in this direction. Videos published by Ukrainian sources show that the Ukrainian artillery shelled the Russian soldiers inside the trenches, which suggests that the Russian forces may have a partial control inside the western part of the trench line. However, some Ukrainian sources considered the footage to be old and, according to them, the stronghold north of Novoprokopivka remains under the Ukrainian control. On the other hand, the Russian artillery remained focused on hitting the central part of the trench line in support of the advance of their forces in this direction. For the moment, due to these frequent counterattacks of the Russian forces from the west, it seems that the advance of the Ukrainian forces towards Novoprokopivka has been stopped. For this reason, it seems that the Ukrainian forces are responding by increasing their activity in the areas between Robotyne and Kopani. Yesterday, Russian sources published footage of their artillery shelling the Ukrainian infantry units less than 5 kilometers east of the town of Kopani. On the other hand, Ukrainian artillery and drone units were a lot more active in the areas east of Kopani during the last 48 hours. The 65th and 116th Mechanized Brigades of the Ukrainian Army, supported by artillery fire of the 44th Artillery Brigade, managed to destroy at least 5 Russian BMP infantry fighting vehicles on the eastern outskirts of Kopani. The increased activity of the Ukrainian forces in this direction could force the Russian command to return a part of their airborne units and reserves near Kopani, weakening the Russian defense in the central part of the front line in the direction of Novoprokopivka, facilitating the work for the Ukrainian forces operating on this part of the front and creating better conditions for new attacks over this town. In Bakhmut front, battles are ongoing near Klishchiivka, Andriivka and north of Kurdyumivka. According to sources on both sides, the Ukrainian army continues the efforts to clear the Russian positions along the railway embankment near Klishchiivka and Andriivka. Russian sources published footage of their artillery hitting the Ukrainian infantry unit east of the railway, confirming that north of Andriivka, Ukrainian forces did manage to clear a part of the Russian fortifications. The same situation is reported from the areas north of Klishchiivka, where Russian sources again published footage of their artillery shelling the forest area north of this town, confirming another Ukrainian advance in this direction. According to some Ukrainian sources, after several failed attempts to counterattack north of Klishchiivka, Russian forces withdrew and the Ukrainian army is retaking the fortifications north of this town. On Donetsk front, heavy battles are reported in the areas north and south of Marinka, as well as inside the destroyed town. Regardless of their frequent attacks in Marinka, it seems that the Russians have not been able to advance near the Ukrainian positions in the western parts of the town. North of Marinka, a few days ago the Russian forces managed to capture some trenches southeast of Krasnohorivka, but their subsequent efforts were stopped by the Ukrainian forces. In the southern part of the front line, the battles are ongoing for the control of the strongholds east of the Pobieda-Novomikhailivka line. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, today, in the area south of Marinka, the Ukrainian forces stopped at least 6 Russian attacks and 8 more attempts were stopped yesterday. During the last 48 hours, Ukrainian forces managed to advance in this part of the front line, taking control of some defensive positions. However, positional battles are still ongoing in this area. Friends, if you like my daily updates, I kindly ask you to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as this will greatly help the channel to reach a wider audience. That's all for today's update. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, and have a great day.